that can be very helpful. Not only does she have an in-depth understanding that Dominique is able to join us tonight. And Dominique will speak for some time. She'll give a talk and a guided meditation after the talk. And then there will be time.
I think it's going to be a bit wobbly because I was listening to the chanting and it was not regular. So unless the rhythm has deeply changed in the way the ashram chants. All right. Well, thank you very much for the invitation. It's always a great honor and a blessing to be able to have a little glimpse of just invite some reflection based on my own background, maybe different doorways, and I hope it'll be and it's kind of more of a scientific way to speak of it, but for me sometimes it's helpful, so I just wanted to share. And so one way to understand that started 14 billion years ago. And the interesting question is always, okay, but what was there before? What was there when there was no time and space? And of all of our experience, of all of our moments. So then helps us to, especially the word conventional reality, helps, I find, to really see what we're speaking about. Basically everything that is, so it's not real. And simultaneously we can see it, so it's not real. And simultaneously we can see it, we can take a photo of it, we can speak of it, we can find it beautiful. We can take a photo of it, we can speak of it, we can find it beautiful. So it has to be real time. So it has to be real time. And there's just a few themes I wanted to explore about that view. That we tend to get fixated. We tend to get fixated in an understanding of reality, and then I recover reality. And then I recover myself, and then I continue. I go back home, go back to my room. And then the next day, I go back to my room. And then the next day, I walk again, and at the same place, huge spiders run at me. And I'm like, what? What is this? Huge spiders run at me. And I'm like, what? What is this spider? Very proud of being a martial artist, and I had been giggling and crying and screaming like a girl for basically a flower on the floor. And flower on the floor. And that's such a beautiful metaphor of another example of how the way we think we know the world is just nuance or qualities of blue faster than other people speaking other languages. And that's one example of the many studies that because we have all a very fixated way to see the unreal, we then have a hard time. We might actually be in conflict looking at the same thing just from a different angle. So we all have this perception of what we call my conventional reality. And the topic I wanted to really explore today is the fact that the way that we perceive the unreal is very much conditioned by our own mind. The way we perceive things, how we are placed to look at something, and through which lenses we are looking at the world. So if you take three friends who go watch a movie together, and when they come out, they start speaking. And if it was a movie about, a husband and a wife going on a holiday, and an adventure would happen to them. So if one person is happy in his relationship, he's going to come out of this movie and find it's been a very lovely movie. A person who's just in a divorce or who had parents who would be quarreling is going to find it as a horrible movie because it was so painful to see that. And somebody else who at that time has been very depressed is going to be very hurt by a movie showing happiness. So the way we are in our own mind actually creates lenses through which we look at the world. So not only is the world we're living in interpreted differently by our language, by the way we place ourselves, by our culture, it is also seen and understood differently because of our own beliefs. So when I meet, for example, patients who suffer from depression, they have glasses through which they look at the world, which taints everything with sadness. For example, if you take a person who's not depressed and you have them watch a sad movie, they're going to be sad during the movie, and once the movie is over, you must have had this experience. You're sad and you can even cry during a movie, but when the movie is over, you just continue with your day. Whereas somebody who has depression, if you show them a sad movie, they'll stay sad and they'll continue to be sad for hours and hours because they have glasses. Not easy to live in, something that doesn't bring any happiness, in which there's no hope, and in which nothing is good for them. So all of us, we have those glasses, and we look at the world through those glasses. And the problem is that we forget that it's just a way to look. What we are considering to be real is not real. It is just one way to perceive, one way to understand. And that brings a lot of questions about our own mind, right? We all have, if you look at your beliefs, we all have very strong beliefs about what is good or bad, about what we want in our life, about who we are, what kind of person we like. We have a lot of beliefs within our own mind. And usually we tend to have them all around, and they create the way we look at the world, the way we understand the world, and the way we're going to respond to the world. So then the question is, what to do with that? Because we can hear it over and over. The way we perceive the world is not real. The way we understand is not real. The way we look at ourselves is not real. And we can still be in the same sorrow. I mean, this is the first noble truth of Buddhism. That humans, we do suffer. Human existence is made of suffering. And the biggest reason of that suffering is that grasping that we have on what we believe to be real. So how do we get free from that? And actually, Swami Amritananda Swamiji was speaking of that, how we need to separate from the unreal, how we need to separate from the unreal so that we can connect the real, which is usually the first stage in most spiritual practice, actually not in the practice, but also in Buddhist practice and many practices, actually, many spiritualities. There's a need to step away from what we usually are lost in, that unreality that is the source of our suffering. And so how do we do that? Because obviously for most of us, just knowing the Vedantic teaching that it is all unreal, and that what we truly are is non-dual awareness, or the pure light of consciousness, or the light of the divine itself, oftentimes we forget. I mean, not oftentimes, I don't know for you. For me, it's more than oftentimes. It's most of the time. It's forgotten. And we spend time in this very constricted sense of me and my world and my story. And it's all quite small and miserable. So just hearing the teaching over and over is absolutely needed, but oftentimes it is not enough. We need to act on it. We need to start really question and inquire and act on it. And the Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana, the listening as a first stage, and then the Manana, which is the really pondering, the reflecting. And that's something we're oftentimes not so good at because it's confronting, right? How confronting is it for most of us to challenge our own beliefs? If you look at the beliefs that make you suffer and start questioning them, it is not pleasant. We don't like to change. We don't like to be confronted. So this time of questioning and basically to start looking at what we are doing with our own mind. And that's something I spend a lot of time with my patients. They're not spiritual, but most of them are not spiritual. But what they want is to stop suffering. And I try to explain to them that the reason they're suffering is because they have fixated as being real a pattern of the mind which is unreal, which is just a movement. And that can be changed. So in neuroscience, we speak of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is this discovery that's been made about 30 or 40 years ago, but now is very, very well known, is that the brain is plastic. And plastic, it's not plastic like, the material. Plastic means it's able to move and to change. So the brain has cells that are making little branches, and the more we activate the brain, the more it will make those little branches, just like electric activity that becomes increased. And so that's true for the brain when we, for example, if we learn a new skill, like if I learn playing the violin, the brain will start becoming very active and create more electricity in all the area of the brain that work on moving the bow and working on the string. But that's also true for our inner mental habits. We can change the habits of our mind and deprogram old patterns. And when we do that, when we replace old habits with new habits, the brain starts.
I don't know if you can go back about 10
seconds. So the brain is very good. The more we train in becoming jealous, the better we will be jealous. We can literally train ourselves to become more angry, to become more jealous, to become more sad. And on the reverse, and this is what all spiritual traditions speak about, we can also train ourselves to become more loving, to become more forgiving, to become more present, all of that. So we can train in changing the way we relate to the world. And that's something that I'm just giving you the background in neuroscience, because oftentimes, we hear over and over and over, you need to practice, and sometimes we think that it's not working. I'm practicing and it's not working. But neuroscience says, yes, it will practice. Neuroscience is backing up Krishna's answer to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter, when after his beautiful description of the meditation, Arjuna says, I can't manage, I can't do it. My mind is ungraspable like the wind, and what can I do? And so Krishna tells him, you need to practice vairagya and abhyasa, dispassion and practice. And so science is always a bit slow. So, but science finally is backing up Krishna. It's true, practices really work. So we can train ourselves to start looking at the world and ourselves differently. This is what we do when we hear those teachings about the way you look at conventional reality is only a way. It is not real. There is a deeper truth beyond all of that. And that's something that we can practice on a regular basis. And my favorite doorway, but that's probably because I'm a psychiatrist, is to look at changing the habits that are based on a divided relationship to life. So in this unreality, we all perceive ourselves to be separate body-minds. We all believe that we have an individuated body that has a certain number of years to live, that has a story, and based on that, we all interact in the world. And our mind is very much used to be wired to relate to the world like that. Our mind speaks of a me, of a you, of a me having a life, doing something, getting somewhere, of a me having needs, having desires, having fears and hopes. And so we have this whole conditioned machine inside our mind that has been trained and developed since we're children to function in a dual world. And the training is to start deconditioning those habits, to stop relating to the world based on a you and me, on a me and my body and my mind and the rest of the world, and to start retraining in a view which is inclusive, universal, and compassionate. Let me just give you an example of that, because it might be a bit too theoretical. So most of us, we've had moments where we suffer emotionally. Something difficult happens in our life, or we have a failure, and then at that moment, our mind starts to speak about something difficult that happens to me, and I'm feeling bad, and right, we all have that. And at that moment, most of us, we think we are very special in experiencing that, and that we are alone. Right? That's oftentimes, or at least all of my patients, that's what they tell me. But in fact, those teachings can help us to change that, because in fact, our minds are not so different from one to another. And one example of that, I'll tell you a story, is when I was a young doctor, I was working in palliative, with terminally ill patients. And I was working under the supervision of a very, very good doctor. He was very, very senior to me. And so I would be the young doctor. I would go visit all my patients. And then I would come back to him once or twice a week. And I would tell him about the patient, and he would give me advice. And so many times I would come to him, and I would have seen a patient 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And I would tell that doctor about that patient, about the life and what was happening, the symptoms she had, the medication. And quite often he would cut me and he would say, oh yes, then she must be thinking like this, she must be telling you that, she must be experiencing that. And most of the time he was dead on. And he didn't know well that person. And each time I was really surprised. How do you know? I spend all this time with that patient. You don't see that patient. How do you know what's going on in her mind? And it was very frustrating for me. I was very annoyed. I was at the time even more arrogant than now. So it was really, really unpleasant for me that he knew more than me. And actually, it is only many, many years later, after I have seen myself, thousands, I don't know, I never counted, but after 25 years of being a doctor, you see a lot of patients telling you about their mind and their life and their story. And so progressively, I started to see like, oh, there isn't that many minds. There isn't that many suffering. The range is quite narrow. to the point that sometimes patients come tell me, and they start telling me about things, and I can tell you, oh, you probably are experiencing that, you're probably thinking that. And I even had a patient once, and I was in India, and he freaked out. He thought I was reading in his mind. And I said, no, I'm not reading in your mind. Don't worry. It's just that the mind is quite predictable. And so we all believe that what's happening in our mind is very special. And actually, it is completely universal. It is very, very much shared. And that's a perspective that when we remember that what's happening in the most intimate place of my mind, even our darkest secrets, even the thing that we all feel we don't want to tell anybody because we are ashamed or it's too painful or people couldn't get it, even then, rest assured, it is nothing special. And that can be tremendously liberating. Because we see that, oh, what's going on here and what scares me so much, what is so intimidating to me is actually just a movement of a universal mind. And that starts to lead, right? We're leaving this narrow, constricted sense of identity. We start to open into a large sense of communal humanity. We leave a very restricted sense of duality and start tasting the liberating opening into non-duality. And that we can do with our own mind. And we can do it all the time, because how many times a day do we have thoughts and emotions that distract us, that makes us suffer, and that we grasp and take as being mine? And just by this practice of letting it be as the universality of humanity, going through me and not attaching to it, each time we do that, that is a very concrete way, a very tangible way, every day, many times a day, to go from the unreal to the real, to leave the unreality of a separate sense of self with a very unique mind and story to the reality of that one being manifesting into multiple shapes that are only an expression of itself. So what do we do with our mind when we know that? And that's something we have to repeat ourselves, because we have a very long habit of believing this mind and me to be separate and unique and different. So it's a very long habit that we have to let go of. But I told you before, neuroplasticity tells us we can change our brain, we can change our habits. So when we have those patterns of the mind come, we can very much remind ourselves, oh, not me, humanity. Depersonalizing it, realizing that it is not real in the way I thought it was real. It is only a movement. And from there, once we remember that, just that remembering of that, then we have a choice. I have the choice to not engage with it in my usual way. I have the choice to not be a victim of it. So what can I do instead? Well, that's what's being prescribed by all the meditative tradition. What do you do with the pattern of the mind when you want to be free from it? One would be, if you're devotional, is just to offer it to God. When sadness, anger, resentment, and any pattern come, you realize, oh, the movement of humanity is coming. And so you offer it to God again and again. That would be if you're devotional. If you're more on the jnana path, if you're more attached and interested in knowledge, then as it comes, then you just bring the light of knowledge. Not me, not mine. Just a movement of consciousness. And in one instant, just like the spider on the trail for me, in one instant, poof, it is seen for what it is, and it dissolves. And nothing is left but a sense of presence. Another doorway, and that would be more a Buddhist doorway, but I love it so much I wanted to share. Another doorway is to start filling our mind with compassion. You know, one time, one of my teacher was telling me, if you have an empty glass, how do you get rid of the emptiness? If you want to get rid of the emptiness of a glass, well, you pour something in it, right?
Right.
So if you have a mind that is constantly filled with the emptiness of me mind, because it's very empty when we are only with our small mind, how can we replace all those self-concerned thoughts, all of the habits of the mind that only speaks of a me, of a story, of what I want, blah 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 blah? How do? We replace it with something beautiful. And what the Buddhists do is they replace it with compassion. You could also, you can also maybe in the Hindu tradition, replace it with a mantra. You replace the mind, you fill the mind with something beautiful all the time. And we do that from the understanding, I don't want to live my life based on the unreal. I don't want to be a victim of those old habits that are based on a false understanding of what is. The scriptures are telling me I am not this body, I am not this mind, I am not this limited entity, desperately crawling on this world, trying to find meaning. What I am, what we are, what is eternal and manifest divine light. And so a way to do that concretely is to start really working with our mind so that our mind becomes slow, more and more. I mean, it's quite a slow process, but it's a progressive and very clearly it really happens. Our minds become more and more an expression of our deepest teachings. Our mind becomes a place where instead of being constantly distracted by our personal story, the mind has then energy to direct itself towards celebrating the beauty of being, about glorifying the ever beautiful manifestation of God. Or the mind can become creative in a way to contribute to the world in a way which leads to more harmony and peace. So I have no idea how we are with time, and if I've lost track, but I think it's almost time, right?
Well, it doesn't matter because we're a little bit more free here. As long as we can hear you, because we're not in the standard satsang. So if you've got more to share, I think we'd be happy to hear, right? Yeah. We just hope and pray that the internet cooperates.
Okay. So speaking of that, that we can really train our mind. Actually, that's really, as I gave you kind of the neurological background with the neuroscience. But actually, this is really what the Bhagavad Gita speaks about in the second chapter. At the end of the second chapter, when Arjuna is asking Krishna, how do you recognize a jnani? How does he talk? How does he speak? How does he walk? And then there's this beautiful, many different verses where Krishna describes what are the quality, the lakshanas, what are the quality of a sage. And what's beautiful is that the description of the qualities of a sage are actually, for the sage, it is natural. They will manifest that. But for us, it is sadhana. What for a sage is a natural quality, for a sadhak is an endearing practice. And I really love the first answer that Krishna is giving to that question, how do you recognize, what are the characteristics? And he speaks that the quality of a sage is this constant stand of contentment, that the sage is ever contented. And how beautiful, right? How beautiful this suggestion of a practice, which is a very concrete way to constantly assert from the unreal to the real, from the unreal of chaos and the instability of the world to the real of the ever-abiding peace that I know myself to be and everything to be. So this practice of what could become a practice of cultivating constant contentment. That is also, it's a slightly different way than relating to our mind like before. The practice of cultivating contentment is a way to actually recondition our mind. Our mind is usually geared into I like, I don't like. This is good for me, this is bad for me. This is what I've done, this is all of that. The mind is always in duality. Samkap Vilkalp. So in this practice of constant contentment, we're getting away from those dualities of the unreal to stabilize ourselves in the certainty of the perfection of it all. And so cultivating contentment is very simple. It's basically at any moment in our day-to-day life, instead of waiting for contentment which is conditional, like I'm content, when I'm done with my work and I can have a nice time with friends, or when I'm going on holiday, or for you maybe probably when I'm at the Shivananda ashram, then I'm content. When I've said tick, 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 then I'm content. When I have no problem in my life, and for many of us, we have a lot of boxes to tick for contentment, right? You've all met people who tell you, I went to the Bahamas, but it was a terrible holiday because the airplane was late for an hour. And you're like, okay, but you went to the Bahamas and you're miserable. And so that's somebody that has a lot of boxes to tick for contentment, right? So we can all work on that very easily. It's very confronting, huh? Like at any moment to ask ourselves, where is contentment now? Where is the place where I can meet the perfection of this of being right now? Where and to look. And for that we have to go away from, yes, but I don't like this, and yes, but this should not happen, and yes, but this I need to get rid of, and this problem I have to solve. We have to get through that and find that one tiny place where suddenly we meet life, we meet the divine, we meet the perfection of being, when we say like that is perfect, that is good in this moment. And that's a very simple, though confronting and very demanding practice, where we are progressively, day after day, retraining our minds to stop perceiving reality based on our old conditioning and to start embracing the absolute reality, the ever-presence of the divine, the constant glory of manifestation. So maybe just to end here, because we all are on that journey, and we know it's a lot of work. We know there's a lot of up and down. And at some moments it can be very intimidating or annoying or very frustrating or desperating even. Just wanted to share and that's from a Buddhist, very ancient Sanskrit Buddhist text. It's a 8th century Buddhist teacher who speaks of the 4 qualities of a sadhaka, of a practitioner, that we need to cultivate to go on the spiritual journey in a very fruitful way. And so one of the quality is having a clear intent, having a strong desire and cultivating the intent to realize. That we all know. Then the second one we also know, it's perseverance. We need to persevere, we need to commit, we need to work. Those 2, I'm sure you've heard many times. I just wanted to share the 2 next one because I find them beautiful. The next one is we need rest. There's moment we have to take a rest. We have to let go of the practice. We have to take care of we have to rest. And then the last one is the most beautiful, I think. The last one is joy. Staying in touch with the joy of the journey. And that's something we sometimes forget, right? When it's so much work, and then it becomes, I should meditate, I should read the Gita, I should. And there's no joy anymore. And so at that time, maybe just to remind ourselves to remain joyful or find again what the joy is in the journey. that's what I was going to share with you, and I hope it wasn't too long. We haven't had time to do a meditation. I'm happy if you want to do one now, but we can also take time for questions if you have any. So,
Well, your talk was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. I mean, to give us the scientific backup for practice, the elasticity of the mind, it gives hope. And, and it was so practical, talking about filling our mind with compassion, and the fact that our brain's elastic, we can do it. And contentment. Contentment reminds me of our theme last year, gratitude in all things. So it was really, really wonderful, very practical. And it depends how many questions. If we have questions, we go for questions. If we don't have questions, we go for the meditation. So or both, depending. I think I see some hands up. Sachin? Yes, please. Come to the mic. Yeah. Or who you're going to see right now is Ritu's cousin.
oh, great!
That's Satya. You can sit,
Hey.
Satya.
Oh, okay. Here?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay. Okay, hello, Dr. Dominique. Thank you
Hi.
so much. Yes, as Mataji mentioned, I'm Ritu's cousin, so it's very nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too.
So it was a really wonderful talk. Thank you for that. My question you may have answered, but my mind is kind of wrestling with this. So in the past, I've had a tendency to overemphasize positivity, like to neglect my own feelings and have a story in my mind like, oh, I'm a positive person, I don't complain, I'm fine with anything. And it traps me in situations that sometimes I'm either unhappy with or aren't aligned with me. So I'm learning more to like feel my feelings. So how do I honor the wisdom of my feelings and at the same time cultivate that contentment you spoke of earlier? Yeah.
Beautiful question. And yes, thank you for expressing it like that, because most of the time, people want to get free from a negative mind, and because it's not pleasant. But actually, you're very wise, because you're also saying that we can be very much entrapped into a positive mind. We even have to let go of sattva if we really want to go free. But anyway, what you're describing is a positive mind, that it seems it's a personality trait, it's a quality that you can easily look at things in a positive way. And it's true that can limit us in the capacity of experiencing difficulties. And it can cut us from our very deeply human experience. And then it's not, I wouldn't say that it has to be either one or the other. You can at the same time have a very optimistic vision of the world and feel very deeply the sorrow of humanity and even your own challenges. Those are not incompatible. And because before you might have, that's what positive people oftentimes, I'm more like you, I'm a very optimistic, positive person. So for a very long time, if there was anything negative happening into my mind, I'd be like, no, we're fine. But actually what we learn progressively is that we can embrace the whole of humanity. None of it is personal. Neither the depression nor the positive vision of the world. It is all impersonal. It is all the movement of the divine. And they're not mutually exclusive. So you can deeply feel sadness or anger or a sense of being powerless. You can deeply feel that and still have be very grounded in a deep trust. In a deep trust that all of it is God's will, therefore it is meaningful, and therefore that's very positive. And at the same time, it's very painful. And so it's possible to embrace, that's when we come out of a very narrow dualistic perspective, when we start to, our vision becomes broader then we can embrace more and more and really contain both at the same time. And so if your habit has been a very optimistic mind, then become interested in a loving way as a way to meet humanity, not just yourself. When you're meeting sadness, you're meeting your own sadness, but you're meeting the sadness of all the people around you. You're meeting the sadness of the whole humanity. So becoming genuinely curious, lovingly curious, with this understanding that none of it is personal. And it's from there that you can have both, that you can acknowledge and taste and be touched by sorrow and keep a very optimistic vision. I would say more like a trusting vision. I don't know if it's helpful what I'm saying.
Yes, yes, very helpful. I'm quite moved by your answer. Thank you very much.
And congratulations, because it requires a lot of courage to do that. We are all very afraid of our own mind. I'll just tell you that story because I find it's the most interesting study. They've taken a group of people and told them, we're going to have you sit in a room for 15 minutes without doing anything. And so what happens if you're 15 minutes wait in a room and you can't do anything and you don't have a sadhana? What's going to happen is your mind is going to start ramble, right? This is what happens, blah, 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 blah. So they took those people and they put them a small box on the wrist and they told them, you're going to be in that room for 15 minutes. There's nothing to do. So either you sit and you wait for 15 minutes, which means your mind will be busy and not pleasant, or you can press a button and it will make an electric discharge on you. And they tried before and it's very painful. It's a true story. It's a true study. 2021, I don't know if it's Harvard or anyway. It's a true study. And so then they send those people and they have the choice to either wait 15 minutes or press on a button and have electric discharge. 25% of the women and 68% of men will rather press the button than spend 15 minutes alone with their mind. It is hard to be with our minds. We are afraid of our own mind. We are afraid of the dark places that the mind can go. All of us. And some of us more than others. But so when we can start to get in touch with the darkness of our minds in a loving way, like it is all divine, it is all the light of awareness manifesting as that form, and it is universal. It is shared by all my brothers and sisters of humanity. When we can start to do that, we become very free because we're not afraid of our own mind anymore. And we become very free because we start to see that there's no separation, there's no other. It is all this one movement that I am. And so there's a great sense of connection and compassion and unconditional love that can arise. So yes, go dig in the dark places of your mind and do it with trust and with a sense of very loving dispassion. And that will make us and all more human and more free. So enjoy the process.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Parul?
Hari Om, Dominic Ji. Lovely to see you.
Hello. Nice to see you too.
Yeah, I just wanted to, you mentioned this practice of, was it finding the compassion or filling your cup with compassion? What is the Buddhist way? I have some version of it myself, but I'd love to hear more on the Buddhist way.
So there's many, many different practices to do that. And let me just give you a very informal practice that you can do. Basically, what the Buddhist would tell is that if you remember that everybody you meet, everybody around you has been because of past life. So everybody you meet has been one time a mother, one time a father, one time a friend. When we start to look at everybody around us like that, then there is a genuine sense of care that can happen. And so a very easy way to cultivate compassion is when you are outside or when you are surrounded by people, is to remind yourself of this deep connection this deep loving connection that you have with everybody, to cultivate this sense of brotherhood and sisterhood and motherhood with all humans, and to look at them, you know, if you think of the people that you love most, compassion means that you don't want them to suffer, right? All the people you love, you really don't want them to suffer. That's compassion. The definition of compassion is a love based on the wish that the other one stop suffering. That's the Buddhist definition. So basically, when you remember that everybody is your family, all humans, regardless whether you like them or not, their gender, their caste, their society, whether even people you don't like, we all are brothers and sisters. And when we start looking at them and start wishing them to be happy, and that's something you can do anywhere. You know, you are outside or you're in a bus and you quietly look at people and you go into that place where, you know, I don't know you, but in a previous life you've been my mother and I really wish you to be happy. And you start looking at, I mean, that's if you have a good relationship with your mother. If, you know, some people have difficulty.
Yeah.
Not everybody has a very good, so anybody, but you get my point. So you start looking at everybody with a sense of genuine wish, may you be happy. And that's a sentence you can tell to yourself. The traditional sentence is, may you be well, happy, and peaceful. And that's very easy. In India, it's very easy. It's very crowded all the time. So you can all the time practice. You have all the time people. So you start looking at, and that's beautiful. You know, I do that I take the train in Switzerland. And it's very easy when you're in the train and it's very crowded and you come back from work and you're tired and you're just like, it's very easy to be in my own mind. Like, oh, I'm tired. I want to go home. All those people, you know, it's very easy. But then I do this practice where I start looking around. Now I do it discreetly. I don't stare at people. I just look at people and you look at them through these eyes of kindness and brotherhood. And I'm like, and that person looks very tired. It's like, may you be rested. And that person looks upset. May you find peace. And then you look at everybody and you extend a sense of a wish that they will be happy. And that you can do all the time. And that's a way to actually very concretely quit the me, mine, mind and go into the universal compassionate mind. So that would be a way to do it. I hope it answers your question.
Yeah, it does, definitely. Thank you so much. I know Ramatma don't give me time for a lot of questions, so I'll stop.
Tanya, did you have a question? Yes, Tanya.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dominique. Nice to see you again.
Hello. Nice to see you.
I had a question. So, this might be a little unrelated, but recently I've been having a hard time at work, and I know what the right thing to do here is, which is, you know, in my case, to find a new job. Or either way, do the best I can at this workplace before I leave, or while I'm in the process of leaving. But I often feel so trapped in, you know, anxiety and negativity and this sense of failure and inadequacy in myself that I am unable to act. And again, what you said, all this knowledge of, you know, having trust that, you know, it is not me, it is a movement, it is not individual, it is not personal. You know, I should have faith, for me personally, I should have faith in God that, you know, this is God's doing and none of this is real. But it's very difficult knowing the right thing and not being able to act on it. And at the same time, having that trust that, you know, whatever happens, happens for the best. Sorry, I guess this was very convoluted.
No, but you're describing it really well, actually, and this is what we all recognize, that we find ourselves in a place in life where we can't move forward because we have fears and the mind gets very, very disturbed. And it's hard to make a decision like that. It's very hard to make a decision when the mind is absolute chaos. And so what I usually recommend people when they have to make a decision and the mind is so chaotic that they can't, is I suggest to them to decide for a short time not to make any decision and to only take care of the mind. So that maybe, and I tell them make an appointment, like I'm not going to make a decision about my work until 2 weeks or a month or 2 months, I don't know. To get out of the trying to make a decision. That's the first thing, because you can't make a good decision if the mind is completely chaotic. And obviously it's not enough for you to tell yourself it's all God's will and it's fine. No, I mean, you still have to make it, I mean, yes, but you have to make a decision and your mind is too chaotic for that. So you don't know which one is the good one. So first to decide to not make a decision straight away and to start quietening your mind by any way that you can to create a bit more space within you. We cannot make a good, wise decision when the mind is in complete chaos. Basically, we make very poor decisions when we are afraid. So don't make a decision when you're afraid. If you can, wait. And so then how to work with your mind when your mind is saying it's failure, it's going to have a problem, it's going to be difficult afterwards, I should be able to manage it. You know, when the mind comes with all those negative thoughts, well, you just go back to asking yourself over and over, who is watching that mind? Who is observing those thoughts? Am I observing those thoughts? And the answer is yes. And to slowly disengage from the thought and to just become present. Stop talking with the thought and rest in the observer. Now, I don't know if that talks to you because that's a specific way to practice in meditation. Maybe you have another doorway. Maybe for you, if you're devotional, you know, I don't know you enough, maybe you would be devotional. So it'd be, okay, for a while, I'm just going to chant God's name. Constantly chant God's name. Or chant Bhaja, or whatever, you know, or start reading a lot of scripture. Do anything that you create some distance between the very traumatic mind so that you can find again some kind of good presence, good grounded quality from which you'll be able to make a better decision. And then I'll give you my trick, because that's what I try to do. When I have to make a very hard decision, and you know, sometimes people tell you make a paper and you write the positive and the negative, but that never works for me. Because, you know, there's always a lot of positive, but there's a lot of negative, and then even if there's more, it never works. So another way, for me it doesn't work at least. So another way to do it, and maybe it will work for you, is when I have to make a decision, I ask myself the question, what decision will create the most love? What decision will create the most peace? And see, so we move from the mind to the heart. We move from, oh, this is better, this is, we move from there and we start to go a bit more deeply. You know, what decision will create the most love? And then you feel, you know, the most love for you, the most love for your close one, the most love for the world, the most love for your colleagues, you know, you start to, and that's a different way to ask the question. So I don't know if it's of any use. As everything that I say, you know, if it's useful, take it. If not, really don't worry about it. Those are just all words of unreality in unreality.
Very useful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for asking the question.
Thank you. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Yeah. Any other questions? Doesn't seem. Did you have a question?
Just a simple.
Okay, yeah, please.
Just a simple question. Hi, Dominique. The 8th century.
Hari Om. I cannot hear you so well. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. Now
much
it's
better.
on. Hari Om. Simple
Hari Om.
question. Were you speaking of Padmasambhava, the 8th century Buddhist, or Machi Glabran? Who were you speaking of?
Oh, Shantideva.
Shantideva.
The Bodhicharya Avatara.
Ah, wonderful. Thank you. It was a wonderfully encompassing talk. Really useful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Anybody else? Anna? No. Do you have any questions? No. So I think questions have finished, and it has been really a wonderful session, Dominique. I don't think we can thank you enough for that, and it's been wonderful. So we just want you back in person next year. I've been trying to get her in person for a long time, so we don't have to deal with the internet.
I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. I do ask myself every year what creates more love, to choose to come or not, and it creates more love for my mother if I stay. That's why I'm staying.
She says, we're all your mother.
Oh, that's using spiritual teachings to corner someone. Well done, well done.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for the welcoming. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah.
And I can feel the great energy that you all are in, and it's you are so blessed to be there.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Yeah. Thank you, Dominique.
And, I might see you in February when I'll be visiting the ashram, if God wills.
Yes, yes. God willing. Om Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.